Hello, everyone, and welcome into the crowded booth. Those two guys are muted, but we're going to be talking about Week 3 of college football. A full recap, the SEC. What's going on with the SEC? We recap a couple of the games, look at the status of this conference going forward, and who's leading as we kind of get into the heart and the first real weekend of SEC play. That and more on today's episode of the crowded booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The crowded booth with Bryce Koon.
Happy Monday, everybody. We're locked and loaded. Will Mannis, Ralph Larry. My name is Bryce Koon. So thank you much. Much thanks unto you for joining us on a fine Monday evening. We're locked and loaded talking college football. The SEC, man, it is absolutely nuts whatever's happening in the SEC. We're going to talk about that. Yes, Georgia Tech fans, I'm going to let the other two guys talk about that Ole Miss Georgia Tech game, but we're going to talk a little bit more from the Ole Miss perspective. I'll let them say what they want about Georgia Tech as well, and a ton of fun. We're going to talk about it. First, while we got you here, if you have not already, Ralph, I told Will, okay. Will, I told Ralph, Ralph, where's our words are hard? But
throw it up there.
Where's the words?
You took that. You deleted it.
I think I accidentally deleted it. That's it is what it is. Words are hard. Will, I believe that I told Ralph, yes, 67%. It's gone down to 59% of the people who watch our content are subscribed. So that's an improvement.
We got some subs. There we go.
We got some subs. And look, it's completely free. It costs you nothing. So take your grandmother's phone. If you have one living or perished, just go find an account, make an account, and go ahead and knock that out. So let's roll. Let's rock and roll here on a fine Monday evening.
That was Stu Feiner-esque, joking around with death like that.
Yeah, it was a wild time. That's for sure. Look, we're going to talk about the SEC, just a wacky and wild conference. Ralph, I've got it lined up in there, the order I want us to go to, and we're going to take a look at a game that, look, guys, let's just be honest. This game turned into almost a boxing match. Florida shocks Tennessee. Ralph pointed it out. I think we all took Tennessee last Wednesday night, but Ralph did say they haven't beaten the Gators down in the swamp in Gainesville since 2003. Will, your thoughts on a Florida team that, man, it looked like what a Billy Napier team thought they would. Really a ground and pound, and Graham Mertz really played well in this game.
Yeah, he did. And like you said, they have that running game. That's got to be Florida's identity. Mertz is not a guy that you can lean on to throw 30, 35, 40 times a game. And they got to run the ball. And we said it last couple of weeks. They weren't giving Trevor Etienne the ball enough. It was obvious. They saw that was a problem and really fed him and leaned on him. That was a big game for Florida. That honestly may have just saved Billy Napier's job.
Yeah, no. And look, I agree with you there. I think when you saw Napier, I don't know if you guys saw this, kind of some of the rumblings too, that Trevor Etienne, might look to opt out of the rest of the season. I know folks down here in Louisiana were really excited about that, thinking that he might come back home to the state of Louisiana. But all things considered here, when you look and see
what this Tulane?
I think Louisiana Tech. I think he's going to go up to Russell.
Oh,
I think so.
Oh, Bulldog. Sure. He wants to be a Bulldog.
Yeah,
okay.
He wants to be a Bulldog. Yeah, I think so. All things considered, I think Florida played well. Like, you got to give credit where credit's due. Kind of looking at the stats. We have a great partnership with Stat Broadcast, exclusive partnership with StatBroadcast.com. Make sure you check that out.
There it is.
Graham Mertz, you mentioned it, Will, like, not electric, 19 of 24, efficient, 79% completion rate, 166 yards. Trevor Etienne, 23 carries, 172 yards. He averaged 7.5 yards per carry. They've also got Montrell Johnson Jr. that had 23 yards on 12 carries and 1 touchdown. But, man, Etienne's a special type of back. And, look, when it comes to this Florida team, I think they're going to be a roller coaster this year, but I do agree with you in the sense of I think that Billy Napier bought some time. He's got a really nice 2024 class, top 5, I believe, per kind of, if you look 24/7 composite. He does really well. Ralph, Florida shocks Tennessee. I don't know how much you got to see of this ball game. What went wrong for the Vols? I mean, Joe Milton, 59% completion rate. He threw a pick, 287. It just didn't feel consistent with Tennessee's offense, though.
Well, yeah, they were leaning on basically running the ball or throwing the ball the whole time, and they could not throw it. It looked like the run game was just not there. They couldn't get anything going. Milton was getting hit a lot. He had some really bad passes. We talk about that interception he throws where, I mean, he throws it straight to the guy, 30 yards downfield, and his no receivers near him, but he got hit on that play. So you looking back at it, he got hit a lot. He got, he was trying to scramble for some. He couldn't. I mean, just an overall bad night for their offense. I didn't agree with a lot of the play calls either. I mean, a lot of short passes. I mean, he had 2 deep balls where he threw them downfield, and I'm like, that's what we're used to seeing with this team. 40 to 50 yard passes downfield. These fast receivers getting open, and they didn't do it very often. The first half they completed 1, and then after that they stopped throwing them. So I just didn't understand what they were doing all night. And Tennessee's defense, just it looked terrible. I mean, just could not do anything. Graham Mertz he was comfortable in the pocket all night. I mean, Trevor Etienne was running all over him. So,
oh, Ralph, what? You all right there, Ralph?
Yeah.
That
Jeez.
comment just shocked him.
The comment just blew his microphone away.
Was that
Apparently.
my mic?
I have no idea. I don't know if it was your mic, my mic. It might have been Will's.
I started
Will.
laughing.
It might have been. Let's keep it rolling though here. I mean, look, Florida. I said last week that I didn't think that Florida was as bad as people thought they were. I think Utah is a really, really good football team, solid defensively. And also, we got to realize too, guys, Graham Mertz had to try to get comfortable in this offense. Like, at some point, it's going to be very interesting to jeez. We're just banning people in the chat over there. But all together, this is a live show, by the way, for the people listening after the fact, they go, what in the world happens? Tune in live.
This is why you got to watch it live.
I don't even know what time. I think I've said a different day that we do live shows. Just set a notification, subscribe. You'll know when we go live. Join the Discord if you dare. Stat Broadcast, though, obviously does a good job of kind of, once again, that exclusive partnership with Stat Broadcast. The offensive efficiency. There's a lot of stats, and Will, you talked about this, and this is a great plug as well. If you're an Auburn fan tuning in, check out Will's video on Auburn and the game against Samford that he recorded earlier today. There's a lot of stats offensively that I think are kind of empty stats. One thing that I do like to look at is red zone opportunities. So how much you're relying on explosive plays to be able to score, and then what you're doing if you do get the red zone. Tennessee just had 2 trips in the red zone. And so that means, one, they were having to rely on explosive plays to even get there. And when they got there, just 1 of 2. Florida, meanwhile, I don't know. I got the chance to watch a little bit of this game and then went back and rewatched it this morning. 4 of 4 within the red zone. And you mentioned the ground game of what they were able to do. It just kind of felt like the Gators, just old school. Like, Will, what you talked about, like Billy Napier coached teams. And I've talked with some people out here when Napier was making his rounds, for the Auburn job and all these South Carolina job and all these different SEC jobs. The knock on him was that they don't throw a lot. They're not explosive, but man, they love to run the ball. Do you think that Florida can keep that up through the heart of their SEC schedule to, let's just say, get to a bowl game? I think they could get to a bowl game, especially with this win.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, look at the SEC East. I mean, to me, the run defenses don't look great outside of Georgia. Maybe Missouri, they've got some talent on the defensive line. So Florida can just lean on a running game and get to 6 wins. This was what they're 2-1 now. So they just need 4, and they still got to play South Carolina. They got to play Vanderbilt. So that should be 2 wins there. Just run it with that style. But you talk about explosive plays. I want to touch on Tennessee. You look at them last year with Hendon Hooker. They relied on home run plays last year. They didn't have to go and score touchdowns in the red zone because they could just throw it over the top with accuracy. And Milton doesn't have that accuracy. So I think that's just Tennessee's offense. I think that's what Josh Heupel wants to do. Not that he doesn't prioritize the red zone, but they're so set and they're going to try hard to hit those explosive plays. So their red zone stats aren't really ever going to look good.
Yeah. I like what you said right there. That's what it's predicated on. And it really makes you think, I mean, with all the speed that they had, and look, that's what they were able to be really good at last year. You got to hand it to them. The guys that they had, they could do that. Obviously, just don't have those guys to be able to be so perfect in that offense. Ralph, when you look at Tennessee, the Vols, I mean, everyone we've talked about kind of a weaker SEC, especially a weaker SEC East. you still have a chance to get to Atlanta. Now, that makes that game so much more important at the end of the year when you host Georgia, but you just don't have a lot of room for error here. I mean, the margin of error is literally zero. So where do you go from here if you're Tennessee? And so we'll say it. Is Nico time? I don't even know how to say the guy's last name. Is it even going to come up in the conversation? Oh, well, Ralph's muted. Is Nico time going to come anytime soon? I think Jonesy got a hold of Ralph's mic before he got banned from the chat. Could they make a change? Like, would that fix any of the issues in your opinion?
I mean, not really. The offensive line looked terrible. The defense looked terrible. I mean, you can have whoever you want there back there, but if your defense can't stop anybody, your offensive line's not blocking anybody, what's Nico going to do differently than Joe Milton did on Saturday? Mm-hmm. So you got to fix your main problems on your offensive line and your defense in general before you start saying, is it really Joe Milton's fault? Joe Milton didn't play horrible. He had a lot of drop passes, though. He had some passes that were kind of behind the receivers and stuff, but overall, Florida played a great game. I mean, you can, if you're a Tennessee fan blaming, Joe Milton, look what Florida did. They played great. They're not a bad team, But to answer your main question, looking forward, you got UTSA this weekend, a little drop down in competition from like Florida.
Yeah.
Then you got South Carolina, A&M, Alabama, Kentucky. You got a stretch where you really got to play your best kind of football if you want to stay in contention this year. Yeah,
stay in contention, obviously, with a chance to potentially
you look at
do some damage. Go ahead.
You look at Florida; they obviously prioritize this game. They heard all the noise that they weren't good, that they hadn't been playing well. So they made it a point in this one, and they really just out physical Tennessee. Which, again, I think that's another knock on Josh Heupel and his Tennessee teams, and it will be going forward that you can just out physical them.
Yeah. The scheme works if you have the athletes like they did last year, but I do agree with you. Until they build in the trenches, it's going to be something. And you have to ask yourself, does that scheme predicate, stuff in the trenches? I don't know that it does necessarily. I think it's more of a let's get a bunch of athletes and let's get some athletes on defense and hope we can make enough stops to be able to win a ball game.
They're that's kind of been an old cliche for high-powered passing offenses, but they really kind of do play basketball on grass. I mean, the quarterback is just a point guard, and they had Hendon Hooker that could throw the full court pass, and get an easy layup. And, they don't run the ball a ton. They run it when they have to because they can spread the defense out, but they don't just line up and run it through anybody.
It'd be interesting to see what kind of adjustments are made from the Vols going forward. Our second game on the docket. Ooh. Hiccup right there.
Oh,
hiccup. Ooh, hey, we're having a heck of a show tonight so far.
Man.
Georgia overcomes a slow start to take down South Carolina. Guys, I had Palmer on. We're going to have him on again this week in a pre-recorded show that'll come out probably on Wednesday. The question was, would the offense be explosive enough? And, you look at this game, I think one thing is key to me. Georgia has some serious issues with being able to manhandle people up front. The offensive line hasn't necessarily clicked, even though they had some, really good players come back for that unit. The running back room, I don't know if you guys saw the news, Kendall Milton could be out now for an extended period of time. It has just been topsy-turvy. Will, you joked, keep number 86 back there. Dylan Bell's a really, really good athlete, and he looks really good back there.
Dylan Bell should be the running back. He's RB1.
He's RB1. He's really, really good. All this to say, once they get Ladd McConkey back, who's a fixture in that offense, Ra Thomas has looked pretty well for them, Dominic Lovett, Brock Bowers, obviously. Is this just going to be another scenario, and we'll start with you again, where they're just kind of getting ramped up, or do you have legitimate concerns about this Georgia offense?
No, I have no concerns about Georgia's offense. You talk about they haven't had Ladd McConkey. He's not been healthy. He's the big vertical threat for this offense. Ra Thomas, Dominic Lovett, really talented receivers. They transferred in, so there was going to be an adjustment period, and we've seen that through the first three games. You're changing quarterbacks with Carson Beck. There's going to be an adjustment period. Mike Bobo comes in, new play caller, same offense, new play caller, back at Georgia. There was going to be an adjustment process. There's been a lot of hate and a lot of Georgia fans blaming Mike Bobo, especially for the South Carolina game. But I don't think you can put this on Bobo. He's limited. They don't have the running game because of the injuries in the running back room. They don't have their number one receiver, the most experienced guy, maybe in the SEC at this point, Ladd McConkey, and all the games he's played, and all the big games he's played in. So that was going to hurt Georgia coming in no matter what. And this game specifically, it reminded me a lot of the Tennessee game last year for Georgia. It was a wet game. You know, they weren't going to be able to air it out like they like to. But Georgia and Kirby Smart, they know that they can you said they struggle with manhandling teams. They manhandled South Carolina, you know, as the game went on, they kind of leaned on them, which is what they do. They weren't going to be exotic. They didn't have to be real explosive on offense. They could just play their game, be a little bit more conservative, and just wear them down. And that's exactly what they did. And Georgia's not a team to run up score on anybody anyway.
Yeah. Also, Carson Beck, when you go back and watch the game, he works really, really well off of the play action pass.
Mm-hmm.
When they wanted to go vertical, he did a really, really good job of that. And I think another thing, you kind of look at this game with Georgia, and I see we had a comment about, you know, them blitzing. When Rattler had time, and look, I said this last week, I didn't expect South Carolina to win this football game, but if you let Rattler cook, he's going to cook. Like, that's just what he's going to do. He's a good football player. You know, they had some good athletes. They lost Juice Wells, I think, in the first quarter or second quarter. That really hurt them going forward.
That was a huge loss for them offensively.
Yeah, that I mean, he's just you go back to the Clemson and Tennessee games, what he was able to do, just unbelievable. So, you know, South Carolina struggled, did not score in the second half. Ralph, this defense for Georgia is really, really good. Michael Williams continues to just blossom. You know, we all saw him down here at Hardaway, what he was able to do. But, man, what he's doing in the SEC. But this front seven, I think they're just getting charged up, and they could really dominate kind of going forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, you talk about Michael Williams. He played a great game. I thought he was, you know, electric. You know, he's progressing every week, it feels like. Kamari, God, what's his last name? Lassiter. He had a great game. He had 2.5 tackles for a loss, I'm pretty sure, if I'm looking at the stat line right. This defense is still great. I mean, look, they started off slow, had a really rough first half. I didn't think they were, you know, playing to the level they usually play with. They weren't. I think they're overlooking South Carolina at first. You come out. I mean, you know, we know what Kirby does or what he does usually. He comes into halftime and says, "Look, guys, I'm a lot of fire in you, and we're gonna play." He
threatens the life of all their firstborns if they're losing at halftime.
Exactly, and he lit a fire in them to, you know, either start playing our level of football or you're not playing the rest of the season. I mean, seriously, this is he hates losing. He hates losing to teams that easily should beat. You know, this game was rough for Georgia offensively. Obviously, people are going to blame Bobo. They're going to blame, you know, Carson Beck. Is he really the answer? Georgia's not going to show their full offense yet. I mean, look, South Carolina was not a bad team. I'm not saying South Carolina is UT Martin, but they're not, you know, Ole Miss. They're not, you know, LSU. They're not Tennessee. I mean, I don't think they don't play LSU this year, but still, I'm just saying in general, you know, the teams that are the higher up in the SEC this year. So Bobo and Beck are going to get in a rhythm soon where this offense is rolling. Now, you got a lot of injuries in the running back room, so that hurts a lot for this team. But I like Georgia where they're at. They're still the best team in the country to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that when you look at this running back room, you got to remember they got Dajon Edwards from down there in Moultrie, Georgia, the home of Trent Griner. 20 carries, 118 yards, you know, averaging 5.9 a pop. Cash Jones, everyone's favorite, had 2 carries for 20 yards and a touchdown. You did shout him out. 20 yards and had a touchdown carry. They're going to find some weapons. Marcus Rosemary, Jack Saint. This team has weapons. I think that they're going to be okay going forward. It's going to be something very interesting to watch.
They're going to open that playbook up in 2 weeks and
down in on that 3:30 CBS kickoff.
Just open up a can.
Absolutely love it. I know Dajon.
I'm preparing for it already. Sorry,
we got it right here. Dajon is that dude.
That's
Moultrie, Georgia, Colquitt County's finest.
Was that his picture? Was that his picture?
Yeah, he's in the background, definitely right over there. Ralph, let's go to this next game. It's one that Georgia Tech fans are going to be very, very interested to talk about. But before we do, Ralph, go ahead and throw up our folks over at Rigged and Ready. Let's go ahead and talk about those fine folks over there. Fantastic, gear that you're going to want to have. Rigged and Ready, official fishing apparel brand for on and off the water. Use code CrowdedBooth10 for 10% off your order, whether you're an avid fisherman or just a casual like myself. Listen, it doesn't matter if you know how to bait a hook or you don't even like to touch the bait itself. It's okay. You can still dress like you do. Listen, altogether, it's going to be a great brand for you to check out. They're great supporters over there in the middle of Georgia as well. Make sure you check them out. riggedandreadyfishing.com. Back here talking about this Ole Miss Georgia Tech game, and guys, it kind of follows in with what we're talking about just kind of overall with the SEC. Now, look, we're going to talk here in a second about which SEC teams we feel comfortable with and kind of the state of the SEC, and we're still going to talk about the folks over in Tuscaloosa. This game for me, I'm pumped because in 2 weeks, College Game Day could be making their way to Oxford, and I'm excited for that. LSU will be playing Ole Miss in 2 weeks up there in Oxford. That being said, Ralph, we'll start with you. You and I watched this game. Georgia Tech was in this football game. And I want to say this. We had the live show on Saturday night. Thanks so much for tuning in if you did. Kind of recapping it from the Georgia Tech perspective. The Jackets hung around. Haynes King is your guy. Like, that's he's a good quarterback. He is, per stats-wise, he is the best quarterback in the ACC. Like, when you just look at the raw numbers, that's what he has put up and what he's produced. That being said, Ralph, when you look at Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, a weapon. Is he coming into his own, and how dangerous can that be for the rest of the SEC West?
Yeah, I mean, look, last year, I think I told you this personally. I can't remember if I did or not. I said last year, Georgia Tech, when they played Ole Miss at home, they gave up 360 or 316 rushing yards. And it was a lot of, Quinshon Judkins and Zach Evans last year, but Jackson Dart had a few of his own. Jackson Dart was running all over the field. He had 14 carries for 136 yards. He looked great. And, people were like, wow, he's not throwing the ball very much. Well, all those run plays they had in the first 3 quarters opened up for some big pass plays in the fourth quarter. And it showed, obviously the score ended up 48-23. It was, like I said, it was close to at the beginning of the fourth quarter. So Jackson Dart looks very comfortable now. He had that whole year last year where he looked great at first, then kind of started to slow down a little bit when he played some better teams. I think he's really got it. He's really there now. Him and Kiffin are on the same page. They're working well. He's got all the trust with his receivers, all his teammates. This team can be dangerous. I mean, the defense. Oh, wow.
Wow.
Is that me?
I have no idea. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on, but that's fine. Hey, listen, but we'll seriously, in all seriousness here, Jackson Dart, and Ralph, we're just going to mute you, and we're going to see if that's the issue. Jackson Dart altogether, and now Ralph's frozen on my screen completely. 48-23, Ole Miss wins this game. Dart throws 10 passes and going for 251 and a touchdown. And yes, how much does new microphone? Make sure you get your super chats in, and Ralph can get a new microphone and a Halo light. I guess I don't know what's going on. Dart carries the ball for 136. He's just a weapon, just hands down a weapon of what he's able to do. How impressed were you with what Ole Miss was able to do, kind of pulling away late? And just overall, like in a wild and a wide open SEC West, Ole Miss feels like they've got a great chance here to make some noise and kind of solidify their spot over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, well, first off, I hope you took my advice from Wednesday's show. Ole Miss, the best bet. It hit. I'm 2-1 now. But a wide open SEC West, you said it. Ole Miss and Auburn are the only 2 undefeated teams so far. Now, neither of them have played a conference game, and that's going to change this week. But it just shows how good of an offensive coach Lane Kiffin is. Coming into it, Quinshon Judkins was going to be limited. He had 13 rushes, second leading rusher behind Dart, who had 14. But Kiffin he maximizes the talent he's got. He knows what he's got in Jackson Dart. He won the starting job last year. Kiffin brings in 2 transfer quarterbacks. He wins the job again. Now, that shows you who leads that room and who Kiffin's most comfortable with. Mm-hmm. He only threw 18 passes, 10 of 18, pretty efficient, 251 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Really, he takes care of the ball. Only had 1 sack, and he ran for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he is the definition of a dual threat quarterback. And so far, I think he's emerged as possibly the best quarterback in the SEC.
Yeah, I think so too. Like when you look at this, Ralph's working on that microphone. when you look at kind of what they're due, 251 through the air, 299 on the ground, like that is about as balanced as you can get to what they're able to do offensively. I like what they have. I think they got pieces defensively. I don't think that a Pete Golding-led defense, especially at Ole Miss, is going to shut anybody down. But and we're going to talk about this in a second, I don't necessarily think in the SEC West this year you're going to have to. The matchup in 2 weeks against LSU is going to be very interesting. It might be the best offense they face going forward outside of Georgia and the SEC East, but we have to see how that transpires. But altogether, I mean, Ole Miss, they've got Alabama this weekend and LSU next weekend. And we're going to preview this game and go in depth on it later this week. If they can somehow win these two, you are sitting pretty, like really, really pretty for a chance to go to Atlanta.
You're looking at a playoff team if they beat Alabama.
That's
and LSU.
Fair enough, yeah.
That would put them at what 5-0 to start the year, and that's their two hardest games on their schedule. I mean, they'll have A&M, who, can be explosive. They've got Arkansas; it's going to be tough. But just looking at the SEC West, you've got LSU, who's probably the most consistent offense. You've got Texas A&M, who can be explosive. Alabama has looked awful so far. Their offensive line has a lot of issues, which is leading to their quarterback issues. We obviously knew they didn't have the playmaker there that they've had in the past, but Arkansas is going to be tough because they're really good up front. They do a great job of running the ball, controlling the line of scrimmage. They got a big physical quarterback in KJ Jefferson. Yeah. Texas A&M can be explosive. Oh, that is
we're getting to it in a second, Palmer. Great question.
That's an interesting question. Auburn has been pretty terrible on offense. The offensive line can't control the line of scrimmage. So, they don't have to be a shutdown defense. They don't have to have a defense like Georgia to go to Atlanta or even make the playoff.
Well, and the thing is, too, I mean, they're going to have to – if Georgia makes the SEC title game, which everyone thinks they'd have to play them twice. And that's something that would be very interesting, to see, how that happens. They got to go to Athens, which, I mean, look,
I forgot
it's
that
going to
game
be
was on their
interesting.
schedule.
Yeah, so that's for everyone complaining about Georgia's schedule. I mean, they're at the back end. You got Tennessee and Ole Miss back to back. Before that Georgia Tech game, that's going to be a real vaunted game for Georgia this season. Don't know if you've heard. All of these things right here. It leads us into our next topic of conversation. I think Ralph's going to run the show here from behind microphone issues.
Do we want to? Oh, we're getting to Alabama now. I was going to say, do we want to?
Yeah, this is what we're talking about. Look, will Alabama? I sit in the camp of it's much more than just a quarterback problem. We've seen in past years. Oh, a little microphone crackling there. Maybe it's Will. I don't know what's going on. Maybe you're crackling. Maybe you're crackling. You might be. Weird show. This being said, in past years, Alabama has been, it feels like, one or two fixes away, from being able to kind of fix what they want. I think they're about 7 or 8. I don't think that this team this year is one or two things tinkering with to be able to be a playoff caliber team. I'm going to spoil my pick this weekend. I think Ole Miss has one of the best shots they've ever had to be favored and to win this football game. I think they're a 7-point dog going into there. So all those things saying, and Palmer shoot me a text. Are we sure, Bryce, that you aren't the problem? I don't think so. This Louisiana Wi-Fi ain't too bad. That being said, Will, your thoughts on Alabama? How far away? I mean, we don't have to really talk about this game. They escaped South Florida, but man, this is one of the worst Alabama teams we've seen in a while. And I want to say this before I hand it over to you. They're just looking human. I think that instead of what Alabama has been doing, we had to realize how rare that was. 15 years of just dominating, of just being one of the best programs we've ever seen in any sport. Best, coach teams, crazy. Now it feels like they're coming back down to earth a little bit. We talked about this last week. They're kind of running out of those elite athletes they've had stockpiled. So your thoughts on this?
Yeah, they don't look like the Alabama of years past for sure. And they've got issues at maybe just about every position group. I mean, offensive line to me is the biggest problem. It's everybody's talked about it. They've got the biggest offensive line of anybody in the SEC, but that's not helping them. I mean, they can't pass block. They can't move. They don't look like they play as a unit. Offensive line, I think more than any other group is really the sum is greater than the parts. You can have 3-star offensive linemen that can take you to a national championship if they've all played together for 4 years. So, that's their biggest problem. And that's causing the problems at quarterback. It's causing the problems in the run game. Defensively, they're a huge mess. I mean, Kevin Steele is at Alabama. He's their defensive coordinator. But Lane Kiffin said it in his presser either after the game or today. I'm not sure what day it was, but he said it looks like Travaris Robinson, their DB's coach, is calling the defense.
Yeah.
So Nick Saban has taken play calling away from Kevin Steele after just 3 games. And maybe that could have been part of their problem because they didn't look that dominant on defense. But they only gave up 3 points because South Florida, they just don't have the athletes to contend with them. But, like you said, they look human, but, I mean, they look like, honestly, a middle of the pack, top 25, like a top 20 team.
Yeah, and look, that's great for like 120 other FBS programs. That's what they want to see. This is a question, and Ralph, welcome back to this program. We'll throw it to you after this. He was asked post-game, Saban was, how would you evaluate the offensive line's performance overall today? And Saban said, well, how many sacks do they have? 5. Back-to-back weeks of giving 5 sacks or more. I don't know when the last time that's happened. Ralph, your thoughts on this? Because Alabama it's just not the Alabama we're used to seeing, and they've got a tough home game coming up this weekend that we're going to preview more, but kind of where do you sit with this Crimson Tide team?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said it from week 1. These receivers are terrible. I mean, they're just not what we're used to seeing. I mean, you got a lot of these 4 and 5-star receivers, but they're not producing anything. Now it backs up the quarterback play. Who's the guy? They don't really know. Jalen Milroe has been now pronounced the starter for this weekend and going forward. I think that's the best option right now because he can at least give you some weapons with his legs and what he can do scrambling. Now, Roydell Williams proved himself that he can be that future, that number 1 back for Alabama this year. And I was talking to one of my buddies at work this morning. He said, I like Roydell Williams better than anyone in the backfield right now. He had 17 carries for 130 yards. He looked great. He runs hard. Jace McClendon runs hard. Just run the ball. You got all this talent in the world in the backfield. Run the triple option. I mean, just do something. I mean, now, obviously I'm joking because that would never happen in the world in Alabama. But still, I mean, use
Run it out of
Milroe.
shotgun.
Yeah, use Milroe, use McClendon, use Williams, use all those guys. They can do some damage. And then when they start stacking 8 and 9 guys in the box, open up the pass play. It's not like I'm, I mean, obviously Saban's a very well, he's done enough in his career and more than enough to prove himself that his dynasty's not over. I mean, he did exactly what he did something that no one thought he could do.
Yeah,
no one thought he
or anyone could do.
Yeah, really. I mean, honestly, it's true. I mean, like we're saying, like, oh, it's over. Saban's a bad coach. Saban's never going to be a bad coach.
The gods just don't want Ralph to be a part of this stream, apparently. I don't know what the deal is. I guess Ralph's heading out. Ralph's just piecing out of the stream. I will continue with what Ralph was saying, though. I mean, look, it's been a great run. But, Will, one of the things for me, you look at the receiving numbers of the Crimson Tide in this game. Isaiah Bond, which Ralph mentioned last Thursday, is a guy that would have to emerge. 4 catches, 42 yards. He was the only player with multiple catches. He had 8 targets. They only targeted receivers 13 other times. And Depre had a catch for 45 yards. Jermaine Burton, 1 catch for 7 yards. Buckner finished 5 of 14. Simpson finished 5 of 9. Roydell Williams, Jace McClellan, that's a nice tandem back there. It's just not elite of what they've had in years past. I think Alabama's in trouble. That's what I'll say. And Ralph, you can throw up the next kind of slide here because this is where we're going. This is kind of where we're going from here. Who's impressed? Like, we can talk about Missouri. I mean, Missouri has looked really impressive. Eli Drinkwitz, being aggressive in what he wanted to do. But overall, you got Georgia that is going to just sit on their stockpile of talent. In the West, LSU obviously made a statement in Starkville, but we're going to have to see, what they do that against higher level competition. Overall, though, man, in the SEC, when you look at this, I know you talked about today, Auburn and Auburn and Ole Miss, the only 2 undefeated teams in the SEC West. Who's impressed you? Like when you look at this conference?
I got to go Missouri. I mean, they have I think they have silenced all of their doubters. You know, they get a big win, an upset win at home over Kansas State this weekend to kind of, I think, just to get people paying attention to them. You know, they've got an experienced quarterback in Brady Cook. Eli Drinkwitz has recruited really well up there. He's got talent all over the place. I mean, he brought in Luther Burden, number one
Luther
receiver.
Burden's a monster.
Yeah, I mean, what'd they go 5-7 or 6-6, and they pull Luther Burden, the number one receiver in his class, 2 years ago. Drinkwitz has done a really nice job up there. He's coaching for his job, and beating Kansas State this weekend was huge in that. But they've got Brady Cook. He's an experienced quarterback, played a ton of games in the SEC. And he silenced some doubters. His own fans doubting him. I mean, they booed him off the field on their opening drive. They went 3 and out, and he rallies back and leads them to a victory. But you know, they've got talent on both sides of the ball. They're quiet. They're quiet way up there near St. Louis, kind of out of the SEC footprint. But they've you know, they can win some games.
Yeah, Ralph just said Missouri for him as well. I think, you know, the 3 things that I took away from this weekend in the SEC going forward. I think Florida, like we mentioned, I think they forged an identity. I think that's safe to say. We've kind of found an identity of what they want to do. Jaden Daniels, I would say, you know, has found himself and what he wants to do. LSU just, you know, ran through Mississippi State. I mean, that was just absolutely domination. Will talked about in his video about Auburn earlier this week. Auburn won by a similar score over Samford. Couldn't have felt more different, though, in the way that LSU dominated Mississippi State. And then Georgia, you know, more on that. I feel like Georgia took the genie out of the bottle. I feel like they are going to put them back in, you know, for one more week and see what they can do. All together, guys, and the SEC, Bama is down. It's interesting. South Carolina, I think, is going to be very, very dependent on a very good Spencer Rattler. Kentucky's kind of quiet. Like, Kentucky could make a move here in the SEC East, and that was kind of my preseason team to watch with Devin Leary. Vanderbilt goes and loses to UNLV, which is just, you know, detrimental for the folks that had the over on the win total. Outside of that, man, I was having a conversation with someone today as we're previewing. It was ridiculous. When you look at Arkansas losing to BYU, you know, KJ Jefferson's a good quarterback. That offensive line, I think they're going to get dominated this weekend in Baton Rouge. I don't think it's really going to be much of a football game after the second quarter.
That's a trophy game.
Battle of the boot. Battle of the boot. Yeah, it is. It is. It's a big one. A big one. Not as big as in years past, I think. You know, the SEC's kind of pushed A&M as that big rival for that, you know, final weekend. Altogether, though, I think the teams, if we did a stock up, stock down, I think you could say Missouri's stock is up. I felt comfortable saying that LSU's stock is up. Will, I'll take stock up. You take stock down. I'm going stock up Missouri, stock up LSU. Who's down in the stock right now?
I mean, low-hanging fruit, Alabama and Tennessee, stock is way down for them. Because, you know, two poor performances in a row for Alabama, a poor one this weekend for Tennessee. You know, I can't say South Carolina because Georgia's a really good team, but South Carolina's got a lot of issues, especially up front. Mississippi State stock down too. They have not adjusted well to that new offense. Kevin Barbay is brought in from App State, getting away from the air raid, going to a more pro style. You know, I don't really know how to describe it because it's so different from air raid and it's so different from what they're used to. I mean, there was multiple times Rodgers would throw the ball right on or throw it to the outside shoulder and the receiver was looking for it on his inside shoulder. I mean, they were just off all game long, and I think they're still learning that new offense.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And once again, apologies for the technical difficulties. You've just gotten absolutely destroyed in your ears if you've been listening to this on the podcast form. I don't know what in the world is going on.
Loud?
It might. It will. You might just turn the gain down a tad. Maybe that's it.
I did turn it down. I don't know.
I have no idea. I don't know what's going on. We'll wrap it up here with this.
This is
Ralph, get ready to load that outro out. We got to get out of here before something blows up. Hey, look, appreciate everyone tuning in live here on a Monday evening. We're going to have some great content coming out the rest of the week. Obviously, Tuesday, we'll have a bonus Georgia Tech episode coming out tomorrow, pre-recorded. Be a lot of fun for you all to tune into. Kind of a state of the program 3 weeks in, what they're doing, what they look like. Technology is hard. Look, Ralph's still working hard back there in the background. Wednesday night, we're going to be live. Previews, predictions, our best bets for the week. It's a fun week in the SEC, but we're going to step out. Notre Dame, Ohio State, going to be a really, really fun game that we'll talk about going forward. College game day, I believe, going to be up there as well. So a lot of fun. College football in full swing, and we're kind of starting to get the meat of conference play as well, which is a ton of fun as well. For Will Manis, Ralph Leary, who's not at his computer right now, I can tell in the background. My name's Bryce Koon. We will catch you next time. Thanks so much. Stay frosty, everyone. We'll see you next time here on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.